Hi there, my name is Chris Blanchard, here today to talk with you about post-harvest handling for market growers, taking on some quick farm tours over the winter of 2008-2009, and again in the winter of 2009-2010. I visited 6 different market farms, and then also did a kind of a virtual tour of my own farm, and took a look at the packing house operations in those farms. Talked with folks about why they do what they do and how their systems actually fit together. Now we've got another presentation more about tools. This will have a little bit about the different tools that people are using on the farms in post-harvest handling, but is primarily going to be focused on kind of the whys and the wherefores of how people have set up their facilities and why they're doing what they're doing in those facilities. Well, the first farm I visited was Hogsback Farm up in Arkansas, Wisconsin. David Van Eckhout is he's one of these really handy guys. He's really a can-do fellow. He's able to make something out of nothing, and that's always something that's really impressed me since I have the mechanical ability of your average ape. Hogsback Farm's a CSA-only farm. They have 165 shares. They do it all on one Thursday afternoon delivery. About 5 acres in vegetables, total of 20 in the rotation. Interesting note that has nothing to do with the packing facility, that David does sell the hay off of the other acres that he's farming. Does some surplus sales to small natural food stores and restaurants, but his packing setup is completely built around these 165 CSA shares being delivered on one day. So a weekly schedule on the farm for harvest and packing during the summertime is on Tuesday they're harvesting time-intensive things like peas and beans and tomatoes. Wednesday they're harvesting everything else, things like your bunched greens. Thursday morning they're packing CSA boxes for afternoon delivery. Friday and Mondays are devoted to field work. David remodeled the lower level of a stanchion dairy barn. He's filled all of that stanchions and gutter area with sand to level, poured concrete, made generous sloping for drainage to the outdoors. Limited ceiling height has presented some challenges for him. He ran into some cooler issues. Of course, when you level out a floor, you've got to add a couple of inches of concrete there to be able to support the weight. So he ended up coming up several inches in places, and what's happened is his standard height coolers were too tall, and so he actually had to shorten those. And you can see in this picture how he actually had to go in and cut off the top of his cooler panels to make this work. The barn itself is 30 by 60. The main packing area that he's using is about 30 by 40. This is a fairly common theme for mid-sized vegetable farms, a 30-foot by 40-foot main packing area. You can see he's put in a metal ceiling so that's a washable ceiling. Large openings in the edges of the facility, sliding doors and the like, allow for flow through of air as well as product. And he's got 2 different coolers for different temperature and humidity regimes, but they're not pallet accessible. He's tried building narrow pallets. They're not super handy, but you really want to, this is something I can't emphasize enough from my own experience. Having things be pallet accessible is really important because you're probably going to grow bigger than you are today. So when you build that cooler door, make sure it's big enough to get a pallet in and out of it. It makes life so much easier. David doesn't use wax boxes, so he has a lot of space devoted to the storage of totes and such. He doesn't use wax boxes in large part because he's not delivering to stores, so he's just using these plastic containers. This is actually what he packs his shares in as well. For product flow, product comes in at ground level on the northwest corner. This is actually the opposite end of the packing shed where stuff goes out of the packing shed to the dock height truck. This provides him with some linearity. Stuff comes in dirty, leaves clean. Most of the product is washed before storage, so he's moving things in one direction. Everything that goes into the cooler is already clean. Roots even are washed at harvest, even for fall storage. He's found that his soil type stains roots, and part of what this means for David in setting up his facilities and choosing the tools that he's going to use is that point loads are a big deal at harvest time, and that makes the speed of his operations extremely important. So when he's bringing in 5,000 or 6,000 pounds of carrots at the end of the year to put into storage for his CSA, he's washing all of those before they go into storage, and that means that he's got to be extremely efficient in how he's working. He uses bunched roots during the season to avoid bagging. That's just one of his other product flow things. He's found that it's easier to get a consistent supply of roots in each CSA box if he bunches them rather than trying to bag them or put them in loose. For facilities, bathroom and hand wash is in the house. The house is maybe 100 feet away from the barn. This year, between the winter of 09 and the winter of 010, the winter of 10, he moved the hand wash facility to the packing shed. They use gloves for all their bagging and boxing. One of his primary tools that he's using are tanks. He has several 100-gallon Rubbermaid tanks and some 50-gallon Rubbermaid tanks. He uses hoses with shutoff valves to pressurize the water for washing the bunched roots, and he does have a pressure washer. It's rarely used on his farm. Several tall tables around the packing shed have greenhouse benches. Greenhouse benching. It's a solid plastic bench. It's called Polymax bench panels. Easy to clean, withstands high pressure, and supports a lot of weight. So he's got these tall tables so that people are working at an ergonomic height, and then he has shorter stainless steel tables for weighing and staging. And those stainless steel tables are all on wheels, so they can be moved around very easily. The larger packing tables are not on wheels; they're permanently placed. He uses a brush washer. It's a very pared down model. Last year it didn't have an in-feed belt. Last year the outfeed was just a slanted table covered with a washable green surface, kind of like a AstroTurf. And this year he actually went to a formal outfeed with sponge donuts to dry things off, and then a circular packing table. We'll see some more pictures of that later. Spring Hill Community Farm is up in the same neighborhood of Wisconsin as David's farm. Mike and Patty Reset have a very small operation, just 5 acres of produce. They market through their CSA, 150 shares each week, 2 deliveries, 5 acres of vegetables, but then they've also got some more land and cover crops. CSA, again, is their primary market and is what drives all the organization on the farm. If they have some excess, they may sell that to stores and restaurants. CSA members help with the harvest, wash, and pack, and do all of the deliveries at this farm. That's given them some different ways of thinking about packing and efficiency, because what they're looking to provide people is with meaningful work, but they're also not paying to have the work done. So on the one hand, they want to have things be efficient, but they also want it to be easy for their members to do, appropriate to their skill level, and they want it to be easily accessible and safe. So members are doing work like bunching herbs, digging potatoes, cleaning garlic and onions. They're looking for things that have high rates of success with large groups of people. Washing, bunching, cleaning, counting. Those are all good things for members to do. They also hire a crew that does some of the other work. One of the important things then is that the members who are receiving the shares recognize that other members are doing the harvest, wash, and pack. So they're a little bit more forgiving about quality issues than they might be on a farm where everybody's expected to be a professional and where the members aren't involved. I really like what Mike said to me. He says, be careful what you start with, because it's hard to change. And what Mike and Patty have now is a system and a farm where scaling up would require new land, would require a change in their delivery system. In years when they need to make more money, Mike and Patty work off the farm in the off season. That's their solution to, rather than increasing the scale of their farm, is just to diversify their sources of income. So you do want to think about where you're going when you start off on your farm. What you might want to have 10 years from now might not be where you want to be now. So weekly schedule, 2 deliveries a week. They're harvesting greens ahead so that they're pre-chilled, so they're not harvesting greens and putting them straight into the box. They're harvesting greens ahead of time, rinsing them, putting them into the walk-in cooler so that they're down to that 32 degrees and that they stay cold. That gives them a much better shelf life. They're harvesting the high-skill crops ahead of time because of the labor supply, so that would, again, be things like greens. For facilities, they have a simple lean-to on the south side of a shed, about 8 feet wide, 40 feet long. Their supplemental community building has a kitchen, and a bathroom, provides a play space for the kids when they're there, provides a space that's out of the rain for the members when they want to eat lunch and things like that. They have a limited need for storage of boxes and things like that because they deliver twice a week in bags. So their product flow, because they've got this open lean-to, a four-wheeler with a trailer moves the harvest in. Packing happens at the same time that the harvest is going on. So part of the crew will be out picking. Part of the crew is going to be in the packing area packing. The gravel-floored lean-to is open to the air. It's easy to access, and things are just hand-loaded into the cooler. Again, everything's appropriate to their size and scale and the labor force that they have available on the farm. Limited amount of post-harvest aids. It's hard to mechanize things if you don't have trained labor. They have 4 50-gallon Rubbermaid stock tanks with wooden sawhorses that support them. They found that the small tanks, even though they're maybe less efficient, they refill quickly, and they mean less management from a labor perspective. If you've got a 300-gallon tank and you've got a well that's running at 15 gallons a minute, it can take quite a while to fill that thing up. They use a pressure washer to wash their carrots. Potatoes are harvested into 25-pound mesh bags and then agitated in a tub, sorted on a grading table. This gets things clean enough for what they need. Gardens of Egan is a large wholesale operation up in Farmington, Minnesota. They do only wholesale to stores. They're in the Twin Cities, which has a very active local and organic food scene. So Gardens of Egan has 65 acres in vegetables, plus a whole bunch of other acres in cover crops and soil building crops. They have a very limited crop diversity. Cucumbers, tomatoes, everything in the broccoli family, peppers, watermelons, and sweet corn. That's it. This has allowed them to really specialize in what they've done and to develop handling facilities and systems that don't have to accommodate everything. It also means that they're not really wanting to expand into everything. I've talked to Linda about this. She's not looking to become an arugula grower because arugula doesn't fit into everything else they do. It doesn't fit out in the field. It also doesn't fit in the packing area. So they've converted a farm shop. It has high ceilings and long doors. That's what became their packing area. They use a brush washer, a sorting table. They have box storage and tote storage, and then a break area and organizational area. That's it. Very bare bones operation this is. Shed roof over the north side provides a space for washing greens and access to a cooler. They have bird netting up in the rafters to prevent nesting, and it's a long, narrow space. It also serves as a loading dock. You can see on the left-hand side of the picture here, their truck can actually just back right up to that left-hand side and roll the pallets right on. So that whole edge is a one big loading dock. Because of the scale of their crops, they don't often need to have two packing operations happening concurrently. They've got everybody out picking kale, and then they've got everybody out picking broccoli, and then they've got everybody out picking peppers. So the kale comes in, it gets washed, then the broccoli comes in, it gets washed, the peppers come in, they get washed. So that's actually made some other things easier too. It's not like they're running a barrel washer and having to have stuff be washed in a tank all at the same time. They have a porta potty and a hand wash facility about 100 feet away from the packing shed, and then a hand wash with hot water in the packing shed itself. Primary post-harvest handling tool at Gardens of Egan are 280-gallon Rubbermaid style tanks. They've retrofitted the valves on the bottom of the tank so that and you can learn more about this in my talk about the actual tools that we use on farms for post-harvest handling, but the plugs on these tanks are about an inch from the bottom, so they retrofitted into the bottom a plug that drains right out the bottom of the tank, and then it has a ball valve on that. Linda says she'd prefer a stainless steel milk tank, but the two long skinny tanks work really well in their location. This is a lean-to facility here. These long narrow tanks allow them to back a truck right up to it, dump a bunch of produce in very easily, and still have room to work on the other side of the tank. They've got welded steel frames that provide support for the tank and give them, and not only keep them off the ground so that you can drain out the bottom, but it also makes it so that they're at a more ergonomic work height. They make extensive use of an ice machine on their farm because of the broccoli and the kale they're doing. This is almost mandatory. They've got on the right-hand side, you can see the insulated bins that they use so that they can be making ice into these insulated bins a day ahead of time, cover those insulated bins up, roll them into the walk-in cooler, and then the next day when they need the ice, they can pull that back out and scoop directly out of that, put it on the broccoli, put it on the kale. They have a 20-inch brush washer for peppers and cucumbers. Tables for storing tomatoes. This is a table covered with a laminated top, so it's very easy to clean. And you can see then they've got the boxes stored right underneath. So all they need to do is grab when they're sorting tomatoes into their final pack. They're just grabbing those boxes out from under the table, sticking them up on top of the table, packing the tomatoes right into them. They have a lot of concrete. Concrete's a great thing in a packing shed because it not only does it make cleanup really easy, it makes it easy to avoid having food scraps, but man, it makes it easy to move a lot of product really quickly on a pallet. And so they're using pallet jacks almost exclusively for moving product around the packing area. Their harvest vehicles, they use old U-Haul trucks. That gives them shade during the harvest. They roll the doors right up and just harvest and put the totes right in there. Generally 1 or 2 levels. They're not stacking things up really high. They have several trucks so that once you know how to drive one truck on the farm, you know how to drive all the trucks on the farm. And the trucks back right up to the shed. Dirty product is washed and packed right away and then put into storage. So they're actually packing directly out of the truck. So rather than taking the totes off the truck, putting them on a pallet, moving the pallet someplace, washing the product, they actually have the trucks back right up to the wash tanks. They take the tote of broccoli, tote of kale right out of the truck and pour it into the water, and then they're taking it out of the crisping tank and putting it into its final pack boxes. Peppers and cucumbers work the same way. They back right up to the brush washer. Peppers come off the truck, get poured into the brush washer. They go through the brush washer. They get packed for sale and go into the walk-in cooler. This really works for them because they've got low diversity and high volume. You don't want a bunch of products sitting around waiting while you switch different setups. But when all you're doing is 1,000 bunches of kale, you can just crank through that pretty quickly while people are out then harvesting the next round of broccoli in the other U-Haul truck. Featherstone Fruits and Vegetables is an operation up near Rushford, Minnesota. 800 CSA members, and about an equivalent amount of wholesale in terms of dollar for dollar sales. They just put in a packing shed a couple years ago. A nice facility with a temperature controlled packing area. This is 16 feet by 50 feet long. Nice linear flow of product in here, and you can see down at the far end, you see the strip doors hanging down. There's actually a roll up garage door on the other side of that strip door. So dirty product is coming in at that end, and then it moves through the packing area. In this case, there's a brush washer on the right-hand side. There's some guys prepping the carrots to go into the brush washer, pour the carrots into the brush washer. They move through, and they come out the other end. And you can see down at this end, their guy is working with a clean table, clean boxes, clean liners, putting clean carrots in them, and everything is staying nice and clean down at this end. And if you look, you can actually see the difference in the muddy water at the far end and the clean water down at this end. So nice linear flow. This is really good from a food safety standpoint as well as from a product efficiency standpoint. They have sliding cooler doors. This is the only place I've ever seen these, but it saves a lot of space in the packing area. It means you aren't piling things up against the wall, but because they've separated their storage here from their wash and pack area, they don't need to pile things against the wall. But it also means then you don't have this big 4 or 6 foot wide door swinging out into the middle of your packing area. Lots of natural light in here. On the other side of these windows is a storage area for boxes and crates and bins. But then above the height where all of that stuff is stored is a whole bank of well lit windows. So this is all facing to the south. So you've got sunlight streaming in here all year long. So that rather than feeling like you're in a dark hole, this is actually something that contributes to the good spirits of the workers, and it just makes it a nice place to be. There's nothing like trying to work in a dungeon through the winter time. Plenty of dry storage. So this is outside the packing shed on the other side of those windows from the last pictures. And you can see they've got nice pallet racking here. They make extensive use of a forklift. They've got dry storage on these racks. They've got dry storage above the packing room that we were just in. And then down at the far end of this photo is where their offices are. And they've got stuff stacked up on top of there too. So they've made really good use of their vertical storage here. And again, plenty of use of a forklift to be able to get things up there. The warehouse has bathrooms and dedicated hand wash facilities available. These guys are washing and packing 5 days a week during the growing season. So it's just a constant go, go, go on their farm. That means 4 days a week they're actually packing CSA boxes, about 200 boxes a day, which they found to be pretty much the maximum that they want to be dealing with on a given day. They make extensive use of these plastic livestock watering tanks. They have a brush washer. Now, they've modified the brush washer so that it's got this 2-inch PVC line rather than the skinnier line that we'll see on other brush washers through this tour. This way they're putting out just tons of water in there because more water gets you more clean produce. They have 2 ice machines and a stainless steel funnel that then channels that stuff down into a bin. This is a dirty picture. This was taken at a time of year when they weren't using the ice machines, but the ice machines are actually mounted up above. This year they're going to move the ice machines up even further outside of the packing area because they generate quite a bit of heat, and in the wintertime can make this fairly an uncomfortable space to be in. So they want to move those outside so that excess heat is not being vented into the packing area. And then they've got this stainless steel chute that ice is falling down and coming down into one of those big plastic livestock watering bins. And then that's what they're storing that ice in until they need it. When they scoop it out with one of these yellow shovels, they would be using a clean one. This is like a small grain scoop. It looks like a child-sized grain scoop. And that's what they're using to scoop into the broccoli or into the kale. They use a broccoli buncher on their farm. They've gone for more of the California broccoli style production, where they're putting 2 to 4 heads of broccoli in each bunch. So they produce a whole lot of plants and plant them on a tight scale and get smaller heads. And this makes everything is just a little bit more consistent. It enables the retailers to price things by the head instead of by the pound. Black's Heritage Farms down in Ames, Iowa. Kind of an interesting operation. I don't have many pictures from here. I had some camera malfunction issues on the day that I was down there, so I apologize for the lack of pictures in this section. These guys have been raising produce for more than 30 years, more consistent growth recently. It's a 5th-generation family farm. They do a lot of sweet corn, pumpkins, tomatoes, and squash to area stores, and a complete line of vegetables to 6 area farmers markets down around Ames and Des Moines. They have their main packing areas in a large building that used to serve as a seed plant, and their refrigeration's in an old truck cooler with a reach-in cooler. For handling equipment, they use a lot of stainless steel. Marine really likes stainless steel tables, stainless steel tanks. They're not doing a lot of extensive post-harvest handling. Their focus is on farm fresh rather than on clean. Rock Spring Farm. This is my farm. We're in Decorah, Iowa, and we have about 200 CSA shares in the summer. We do year-round shares right now for a select group. We're trying to expand that marketplace. We do about an equal amount then of wholesale, mostly through fresh herbs and root crops. We are washing and packing year-round, and that means that when we erected a packing facility, we put up a 4-season packing facility. So this has got in-floor heat, very comfortable facility, lots of south-facing windows for bright light coming in. Our main packing area, 30 by 40. This is, you can see it gives us plenty of room. This is where we're storing our squash and our pumpkins in the fall. This is a picture that was taken in mid-November down there. Loading docks out the side of the window, at the side of the building, kind of come out like wings. We put a low dock on the north side and a high dock on the south side. So we've got a place where you can back up a van or a Sprinter. The Sprinters are those vehicles you see FedEx driving around right now. On the other side of the building, you can back up a truck that's actually at a dock height and roll stuff on and off right there. Disadvantage there is we don't have good cover out here. So when it's snowy or in the wintertime, we have to work hard to keep these things clean and ice free. We know that water management is really important. We put in a trench drain. And so this is a grate over the top of it that lets us run a pallet jack over it. And then you can see the pipe going out of it is actually elevated about 6 inches above the bottom of the drain. This gives the soil a chance to settle out down there before the water drains to the outside. Water in the packing shed. We have instant hot water for our hand wash sink. In our packing facility, our utility room ends up being located quite a ways away from where we wanted to put the hand wash sink. So we got this inexpensive little electric hot water heater that goes right next to the sink. So almost as soon as you turn the water on, you've got hot water coming into the sink. This really encourages people to spend the necessary time to clean their hands thoroughly. We use some pallet racking for storage. And then we have a packaging room that separates out our packing area from our packaging area. So the place that we get the produce clean is different from the place where we're really keeping it clean. This is where we do all of our herb clam shelling. If we're bagging salad greens, if we're clam shelling tomatoes, that all happens in here. And we've trained people to treat this as a food room rather than as a place to get dirt off or to, so we really emphasize you need to wash your hands before you go into this room every single time. And once you're in here, you need to be thinking food. We use a dairy bulk tank for rinsing most of our greens. We have some plastic tanks that we use outdoors for primary dunking of things when they come in from the field. But then this dairy bulk tank is where we actually would do our washing to get things ready for market. We make extensive use of a barrel washer because we do grow so many roots: carrots, beets, rutabagas, celeriac, turnips, all that kind of stuff. Stuff that comes out of the pressure washer or out of the barrel washer that may be a little bit dirty. gets hit with the power washer. So we have the power washer we have is a variable pressure washer. We've shortened up the wand so it fits over our shoulder. You can see I'm actually operating this thing with one hand, and we twist tie the handle on it so that it's always, when the machine's on, the trigger on the pressure washer gun is always running too. This is how we do kind of a final polishing of our product. Clean is a really important part of our marketing niche. Dripless Organics over in Soldiers Grove, Wisconsin, that's down in southwest Wisconsin, kind of near the Viroqua and La Crosse areas, is actually a partnership between Josh and Noah Engel and Mike Lind. They have about 100 acres of vegetables. They rent an old grade B creamery for their packing facility. It's less than ideal, but it provides a good intermediate step between what they used to do in their dad's old shop. Dad had a dairy farm. And what they're looking for with the ideal piece of land. They're currently shopping around for a place to put up the ideal packing shed, but they're making do in the meantime. The packing shed has double swinging doors. You can see that this is where most of the product is going to come in through these doors. You can really tell how they're making do here. They actually poured this concrete ramp. It used to be a big step down. Now it's a concrete ramp. It's a little bit tricky to get stuff in, but they can get it in through those doors using a forklift. You can also see then that they've got their wash tank. This is where most of their greens are getting washed, in this galvanized wash tank just off to the right there. Long and skinny because they like to have it flush up against the wall there. They've run a lot of surface mounted water throughout their operation, and this lets them get water everywhere they want it to go. So each washing facility has dedicated water supply. Minimum number of hoses running around on the floor. You got potential for condensation issues, but what they've done is to route that water where any dripping just doesn't pose a problem for them. They've got a dedicated hand wash sink. You can see this is nothing fancy. One of the things I really admire about what the Engels and Mike Lind have done here is they've really done a great job of making do and producing a good product nonetheless. So they've got this. This is a hand wash sink, obviously salvage sink, but cheap, and it's the only thing they do in that is wash their hands, which is very important from a food safety standpoint. You see they've got the hot water supply right next to the tank, so you don't have to wait a long time to get hot water. That's going to encourage people to spend the necessary time washing their hands. Stationary galvanized tank, I mentioned this earlier. You see the pallet jack. This pallet jack's actually set up with some nice kind of a guard on the back of it to help keep things from tipping over onto the operator there if you have a somewhat shaky tank. They use a brush washer as an important thing for a lot of the crops that they're doing. They have a material end dump, then this is where they're putting all of their compost materials. Nice thing about this is it's rodent proof. You're not going to have rats or mice getting into it. And then this can just be simply picked up with a forklift, carried out to the compost pile, and then it's got a trip on the back of it. So it's just got a lever. You knock the lever up, and the whole thing just tilts forward under its own weight and dumps the product out. Much slicker than doing this in a 20-bushel bin or trying to get everything to fit into 5-gallon buckets. That's it. That's our farm tour of packing sheds in the upper Midwest. I thank you for joining me today, and hope you have a successful growing season. This has been Chris Blanchard from Rock Spring Farm and Flying Rutabaga Works. Thank you.